Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to examine with you another horrifying case. The case of Joseph Codd and Christy Sean. Why did a friend destroy a whole family? Have you ever wondered how much you can trust your friends, co-workers, or neighbors? Usually our friends are the ones who know everything about us, but occasionally there are those who merely pose as our friends. Since most people view friendship as one of the things that give life purpose, helping and supporting friends comes first. However, there are instances in which friends who win our trust may subsequently take advantage of our weaknesses in order to betray or injure us. The tranquil provincial town of Lear, North Carolina was rocked by the sad loss of a young woman named Christy Sean and her husband Joseph Codd in 2015. This occurrence was one of the most violent and noisy crimes in the town's history at the time of the catastrophe. The pair was excitedly awaiting the arrival of a new family member, but the most horrific thing was that their attacker was someone they knew well, trusted, and regarded as a friend. Moreover, they weren't the only victims in his early life. Christy's childhood, Sean Christy Maria Shan Codd, the only child of American military soldiers, was born in Madrid, Spain on September 3, 1976. Her father, a U.S. Air Force soldier, moved the family frequently because of his job. Thus, they did not stay somewhere for very long. This nomadic lifestyle had its benefits, as Christ spoke multiple languages from an early age and had the opportunity to experience the cultures and traditions of other countries. However, during her teenage years, she faced difficulties fitting in and making friends in new places, just as she would start to feel at home. The girl started her schooling in New Orleans, Louisiana, and over the next few years, the family lived in various European countries before returning to the United States. She had to relocate, pack up, and change schools and social circles after settling in. Yet it was precisely because of these frequent changes that she excelled at communication. Christy was well known for being a pleasant, outgoing, and charming young lady. She also actively participated in sports from a young age, taking kickboxing classes for a while. After Christy graduated from high school, her father retired from the military, and the family moved to Beloit, Mississippi, where she eventually made true friends, found a new interest in cooking. The teenager enjoyed cooking and experimented a lot in the kitchen. Her culinary creations were truly worthy of praise and attention. Eventually, she made the decision to pursue this area of her life further and finished culinary courses. Her parents had assumed she would become a professional chef, but she also unexpectedly discovered her talent as an acting actress and culinary TV star. She enrolled in an acting academy and moved to Los Angeles, where she found a wealth of opportunities before her, and she wisely took advantage of each chance to make her Mark Christie did theater performances, commercial appearances, and high-profile Hollywood productions as an extra or stunt performer. She even had a small role in the Terminator franchise in 2000, where she performed quite dangerous stunts. In 2000, the young lady graduated from the academy, but she had not yet landed any notable roles despite her striking appearance and obvious talent. She then made the decision to concentrate on her culinary skills as well as on her acting career. Sports is combining these two loves into a lucrative industry. The blonde made it to the finals of one season of the next Food Network Star, but sadly she did not win as the judges had mixed opinions of her culinary experiments. Despite this setback, Sean was not overly disappointed as she had managed to garner significant attention for herself, with thousands of people following her on social media and following her life. Christa participated in several popular culinary TV shows which helped her become well-known and recognizable. As well as works about a year later, Christy founded and successfully developed her own catering business, offering banquet services for various events in addition to retailing. Prepared culinary products. She actively promoted a healthy lifestyle, gave advice on proper nutrition, and even developed her own exercise routines to maintain good physical condition. Her company stood out because it promoted sensible and healthful eating, and the menu included dishes that she had developed and refined herself. The young woman considered opening a farm where she would raise produce that is both healthy and environmentally friendly. This would allow her to grow her catering business while also doing online nutrition courses and working on many other projects. Fateful encounter on TV. In 2012, Christy met Joseph Timothy Codd, also known as JT, a casting director in the television industry who was in charge of choosing actors and participants for a number of high-profile projects. They first met at a Los Angeles studio during a casting call for The young woman expressed interest in participating in a culinary show, and they clicked right away. Joseph, who was almost 7 years older than Christy, had previously been married but was divorcing when they met. He was mesmerized by the attractiveness and charisma of the charming blonde, and he started to court her. Soon, they were in a romantic relationship, and soon after they moved out of Los Angeles, Joseph shared and supported his beloved's ideas. Together, they started construction on their own farm. They moved from Sun, California to North Carolina, sold Christy's very successful and well-established catering business, and used the proceeds to buy a large plot of land in the town of Leicester. The couple realized their dream, purchasing a large and cozy house, as well as a nearly 1-acre plot of land. The man continued to work with TV channels, but now from a remote location, while the woman actively worked on developing her personal blog about healthy living and proper nutrition. They were a perfect couple, their relationship marked by love and harmony. Soon after, the couple decided to formally announce their union, holding a lavish wedding in August 2014, attended by several hundred people attended the wedding, including friends, family, co-workers, neighbors, and even some fans of the well-known couple. They were genuinely happy and excited about their future pregnancy together. 3 months after the wedding, the newlyweds found out they were expecting their first child. Their joy knew no bounds after the new year, when the doctor informed them they were expecting a daughter. A few days later, when speaking with her mother, Christine mentioned that they had decided to name their firstborn Skylar. Everything was going well and the pregnancy was progressing smoothly, but the Codd's unexplained disappearance cruelly cut short the couple's bliss. Christy was 5 months pregnant and actively awaiting the arrival of their child. She spoke with her mother and gave updates on her health over the almost daily phone calls to her parents, who lived in a different state. On March 13, 2015, however, Christy's mother was unable to reach her daughter, and at first did not think much of it. The next day, calls went through, but no one answered, and by March 15th, both spouses' phones were turned off. Christine's mother became concerned because she couldn't quickly check on her children's home because Christine and Joseph's parents lived in different states. So, Christine called a close friend of her daughter, Cecily, who lived nearby and could check on them at their home. When the friend arrived at the Codd residence, she noticed that both of the spouses' personal cars were parked there, but the front door was locked. No one answered when she knocked or shouted, and the couple's phones had been off for 3 days, which was also extremely suspicious through a window. Cecily noticed that the couple's cherished dogs, with whom they loved ones who would never willingly leave alone, were locked in one of the rooms. The woman chose to take a stroll around the house and saw that the back door lock had been forcefully broken, indicating that someone had attempted to enter or had actually entered the house. She immediately called Christy's mother, who promptly called the police. The responding officers confirmed that the back door had been broken into and found items missing, including the homeowner's jewelry box and a safe in the couple's bedroom. Been broken, but there were no indications of a fight for blood or proof that the pair had been imprisoned or abducted. Furthermore, the offender had behaved extremely cautiously, leaving no evidence of their DNA or fingerprints. The family members held on to a sliver of hope that 45-year-old Joseph and his 38-year-old pregnant wife Christy were still alive, but the knowledgeable officers were pessimistic about their suspicious neighbor forecasts. The investigation just stopped in the early going. No hints or even moderately important evidence could be located. The missing pair had no adversaries or ill-wishers, and piecing together. What had transpired was difficult even with broad brushstrokes. The couple's phones were last used on March 12th, and only incoming calls were recorded. The next day, the devices died, so the police decided to speak with the couple's neighbors to see if they had seen anything strange or suspicious. Recently, an intriguing detail emerged. On March 15th, a neighbor who lives across the street saw another local resident throw a large bundle into a trash can near the Codd's house. At the time, he didn't think much of it, but when he learned of the couple's disappearance, He thought the information might be useful to the investigation, checking the contents of. The police wanted to speak with the person who had discarded the strange bundle first. Robert Jason Owens, 36, lived on the same street as the couple and was well acquainted with them. Robert was a handyman and had helped Christine and Joseph when they first moved into their new home. Later, the couple invited their new friend and neighbor to their own wedding. At first glance, there was nothing suspicious about this except that other locals described it as suspicious. The bins are no longer possible because the trash had just been taken to the dump, so any potential evidence would now need to be searched for there. Unpredictably terrible individual discovery, startling disclosures, and even more startling disclosures. Robert was called in for questioning on March 16th and initially denied any involvement in the couple's disappearance. He also claimed ignorance of the bundle, saying there wasn't much to accuse him of at first aside from the unproven claim of another neighbor's names. However, that evening things drastically changed when the same large, strange bundle was discovered at the landfill. Inside were items from the missing couple's home, including police doubts were allayed when they searched the suspect's home and discovered charred human skeletal remains in his wood stove. Robert's clear fingerprints and DNA traces were found on partially burned clothing belonging to the couple, a blanket, and a throw from their home that were all stained with blood. Robert was then apprehended as a suspect in the violent murder of his neighbor and the neighbor's pregnant wife, despite his claims of innocence and contradictory remarks. Eventually, after a few hours, he confessed, and his admissions were incredibly startling. He acknowledged the double fatal incident, but insisted it was an accident. He explained that on March 12th, he had decided to visit his friend's house, but he had swerved off the road to avoid running over a dog and getting stuck in the mud. He then walked to the Codd's house and asked for assistance in pushing his car out. The couple was helpful and responsive, and as they worked to free the car, Robert, sitting behind the wheel, unintentionally mixed the gas and brake pedals, causing the car to crash into the couple. He was so afraid that he would be blamed of killing them that he decided to cover up the tragedy rather than call the police or emergency services. Robert stated that he went back to the Codd's house, broke through the back door, and took blankets from the bedroom to move the bodies, which he wasn't sure were dead. He wrapped the bodies, put them in his pickup's bed, and drove them to his house, where he used a small axe and a saw to dismember them in his own bathroom. After that, he lit his stove and Robert claimed he decided to stage a burglary, but in reality, he had robbed his friend's home himself, stealing money and valuables that he pawned the following day, leaving the crime unsolved. The brutality with which Robert disposed of his friend's body was evident. He gradually threw pieces of his friend's bodies into the fire in the hopes that they would burn completely. The blood-soaked clothing, blankets, and shoes of the deceased he oddly chose not to burn, but rather pack into a trash bag and dispose of in a dumpster. Even seasoned police officers were shocked by the bodies and the eerie calmness with which he related the events in his home. They discovered a saw and an axe stained with blood, skin, and bone fragments of the deceased. The accused didn't even try to hide the tools or clean them, believing that the investigation would never lead to him because he had left no traces at the Codd's house. When forensic analysis revealed that the bone fragments discovered in Owens's stove belonged to the missing couple, law enforcement decided to learn more about the suspect's past. Robert was single, had no kids, and hardly ever spoke to the relatives he had lived with in the past. Asheville, North Carolina. But in 2000, after purchasing land near Leicester and building a house there, it was discovered that his name was connected to an unsolved incident that had happened in Asheville 15 years before. At the time, Robert's close friend Zeb Wayne Quinn Zeb and Robert had known each other since school, lived close by, and were friends. Zeb was also a part-time Walmart employee and completing military training when Wayne Quinn, who was only 18 at the time, unexpectedly vanished on January 2, 2000. Quinn met with Robert had planned to drive to a new car dealership, but he never came home. A few days later, his Mazda protege was discovered parked in a different area of town, with its headlights on, and a heart drawn on the window with a red lipstick. The owner of the car was never located, and it had damage and scratches with paint remnants from another car. Robert was the last person to see Zeb, and it turned out that the scratches contained paint particles from Zeb's car. Robert told an odd and implausible story shortly after they headed towards a different part of town. It was also discovered that Zeb had a romantic relationship with a woman named Misty Taylor, whose former boyfriend Wesley Smith had threatened to harm Zeb if he didn't stop seeing Misty. Zeb then asked Robert to wait and drove off to the closest gas station, but returned 10 minutes later looking frantic and said their plans had changed before driving off in an unknown direction and hitting his friend's car. In this instance, Taylor, Smith, and Owens were questioned, but all three were freed because there was insufficient proof. Additionally, Zeb had a sizable sum of money with him in case he decided to drive, and his pager vanished from his car. It was never determined what message, if any, he had received, and the investigation leaned toward the theory that there had been none at all. Misty and Wesley also had alias, which was not the case for Robert. Another weird incident occurred when a man claiming to be Zeb called Walmart the day after he vanished and said he wouldn't be returning to work for a few days due to illness. The coworker who took the call believed the voice sounded strange and foreign, not like Zeb. When questioned, Owens unexpectedly claimed that he had made the call at his friend's request the night before Zeb drove off. The case remained unsolved, and Zeb Quinn has been listed as missing ever since. However, 15 years after these events, Owens was questioned again and was suspected of having a direct hand in his longtime friend's disappearance. New, unexpected details of an old case were discovered in June 2015, when the case of Zeb Quinn was reopened from the archives and the investigation resumed. At first, it seemed it is unlikely that law enforcement would find any fresh data. Robert repeated the same account he had given in 2000, saying he had nothing new to add. Nevertheless, the police decided to search Owens' property more thoroughly, and they found something very strange in a detached concrete slab. Inside the strangely walled-off cavity, they found small, heavily charred human bone fragments. Sadly, the remains were too damaged to be tested by DNA, making it impossible to determine if they belonged to the missing person. Quinn, a neighbor, told me in an interview that even more surprising outcomes. An elderly man who lived nearby recalled an incident that occurred in January 2000, when young Owens had just bought the land and was beginning to build his house. One evening, he started a fire that emitted a sickly, sweet, nauseating smell. The neighbor confronted him because the wind was blowing the stench in his direction, almost making him sick. Soon after, the fire pit was covered with concrete, which seemed highly unusual, but Robert claimed he planned to build a small fountain there, which he never did. The neighbor had forgotten about the foul-smelling fire until 15 years later, when Owens admitted to being complicit in a crime narrating a completely new tale. He claimed Zeb was killed by his own uncle, Walter Owens, who had been hired by Wesley Smith to kill Misty's new boyfriend, whom he still loved. Robert claimed he was unaware of this at the time, and his uncle had asked him to lure the young man to a secluded spot when the three of them ended up in a wooded area on the road. Once the young man stepped out, Walter shot him silently, and then gave the order to his nephew to assist in dismembering and packaging the body, which was burned on Robert's property that same night. Encased in concrete, Walter Owens had passed away several years prior to his awful confession, making it impossible to question him. Additionally, there was no evidence located at the suspected crime scene, and the legal processes sounded highly implausible. Plea deal and the ultimate decision, Robert was first charged with first-degree double murder, which included the death of an unborn child, dismemberment, and hiding evidence of a break-in and robbery. These accusations included the possibility of Robert being executed, but it turned out that the accused could have been found insane and sent to a psychiatric clinic instead of prison, which neither the prosecution nor the victim's relatives found satisfactory at the same time the investigation into Quinn's case began. From this, the criminal might also escape unpunished in 2017 when the defendant agreed to a plea deal admitting guilt in the murder of the Codds in exchange for a reduced sentence. The defendant had long suffered from depression and mental disorders, taking powerful medication, which his lawyer used as a foundation for defense, certain that the death penalty would not be applied in this case. He was found guilty of second-degree homicide, dismemberment, and burning of victims, as well as burglary, robbery, and other offenses. In total, he received a 59-year jail term in 2022. Owens negotiated a second plea agreement with the authorities, this time pertaining to Quinn's case. However, he only admitted to helping to conceal the evidence of the murder. As a result, he was given an extra 12 years to serve out his already nearly lifelong sentence. Following the sentencing, the murderer addressed the court and begged for forgiveness from the families of the victims he had killed. Quinn's family, as well as the relatives of Christy and Joseph Codd, did not accept his story of innocence, believing instead that the man acted with premeditation and self-interest in both cases. Quinn also claimed that everything was just an unfortunate accident, and mentioned his mental illness order and the impact of strong medication, which affected his judgment. I appreciate you watching, guys. Please subscribe to my channel. You have a lot more amazing stories ahead of you.